Okay, we are up and running. Hey everyone, it is James Gardner here with another Conversations in Courage, episode 7 to be precise. And today's conversation is all about success, all about leadership, determining what is success and its ever-changing landscape and how success can be evolving as we evolve as people. And today joining me on the Conversations in Courage is Holly James. Hello, Holly. How
Hi,
are you?
everyone.
All
Great. How are
right.
you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Holly is a success coach, and she helps personal and business brands really kind of step into the spotlight and own their authentic leadership. And I'm really excited to talk today, especially with everything going on today. We need more leaders. The leaders need to lead. And I think a lot of us are reconfiguring some of our priorities, some of what we determine as success points and things that we want to strive for moving forward. So Holly, let's start by just introducing yourself to our community for those that are watching us that may not know you, and maybe you can just crack open a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. Um, I'm a success coach, and I work with with entrepreneurs, professionals, just personal development with people. But I really love that we're addressing this conversation on success. And also, I think we're going to roll a little bit of leadership into it as well, because I think leadership is a huge part of success. So for a very large portion of my life, I didn't feel successful. And I also didn't feel like a leader. You know, I thought a leader was a CEO of a company, or a president of a country, or a prime minister of a country. Like, I thought these were, that's what leadership is. It's somebody like running something huge. And I think it was only until there was a point in my life where I needed to make some really bold changes and step out of a situation that was just, I was struggling and it wasn't safe. I just needed to get out of it. And that's when I really understood what leadership was. Because when you're in a situation where it's difficult and you need to get out of it, you realize you have to stop playing the victim. And you realize that you can't keep blaming everything on everyone else. And you realize that, yeah, it's rock bottom and it's so shitty, but nobody is coming to pull me out of this. So I learned that, and it was an abusive marriage, basically. If people are wondering, I should probably settle in. And I was, I hadn't worked for 7 years. I had 3 young kids, 3, 5, and 7 years old. And I needed to get the hell out of this situation. And up until that point of my life, I had never considered the power that I had within myself. I never realized that I had the power to make a choice and a decision. I didn't need to wait for somebody else to do that for me. And once I did that, as scared and as fearful as I was, I didn't have a choice. So once I took that first step to get out of that situation, and it took a lot of steps, and I had to work through a lot of fear, but every step you take is more empowering and more empowering and more empowering. And you see more and more and more of yourself. And you step into that power and you feel more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable with it. And I think it's only now I'm realizing that's what leadership is. Leadership is claiming that power within yourself to make decisions and to make choices that are good for you and that align with you. And the more you do it, the more of a powerful leader you become. So leadership isn't just about leading a country or leading, being a mayor of a city. It's about leading yourself through your own life. It's about leading yourself in your personal development, in your self-care, in your parenthood,
Right.
in your career. It's all of those things. And the more you go through life, when we were talking about this in our sort of preliminary conversation leading up to this, is the idea that success changes. And, you know, when you're at one place in your life, when I needed to leave that situation, success to me was being able to get out there and get re-educated and get a job and just get a paycheck. That was success. So I was kind of equating it to more financial success.
Yeah. So
at that
you
point.
with the leadership. So I think we're both in agreement that no one can lead others until they effectively lead themselves.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. That
Absolutely.
is huge. That is
Huge.
huge.
And you brought up some great examples of being a parent or coaching people or your community grouper. And there's in this time right now, people are called to lead in whatever facet that is for them. But this is the time for leaders to show up, 100%.
Absolutely. I
Right.
completely agree with you on
So
that.
now, what I also heard from you is that once you took that kind of self-leadership role for you to, let's say, to get out of that situation that wasn't serving you, you also started to have to reframe what success was and is for you moving forward, which is kind of interesting. So as we take more control over our ownership over our lives, leading our own lives, we start to get really clear on what success is. And you and I both lead from the heart. That is what we do in
I
our
do
business.
now. I do now.
Well,
It's
yeah,
been a journey there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's.
And I think we've both had journeys
Uh-huh.
there, because when I went and got back into the workforce, of course I was working in tech, and it's a very male dominated industry. And I wanted to succeed and I wanted to do well, especially being a female coming into a male dominated industry. Having been at home with my kids for 7 years, it was kind of terrifying, but at the same time, I just wanted to kill it. I wanted to do really well and I wanted to make money. And of course, the corporate world is set up on, you know, a sort of a patriarchal business
Sure.
model, if you will. So my understanding of success for me at that time was, okay, I need to really become masculine. And I didn't, you know, I didn't understand that my heart could play a role in my work, that was even an option. And, you know, talking about spirituality or love or anything like that in the workplace, it just didn't seem to fit. But the problem with that is it's very unbalanced. And I think we're seeing that on the planet right now as a whole. And I ended up just burning myself out because I wasn't balancing all of that structure and that just get it done, just get it done, just get it done, with the sort of softer side of the self-care and the, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being more mindful, taking more time for myself in the middle of the day rather than just working like 10 hours straight and then
So,
coming home and feeding the kids and working another
and
couple hours.
what was the tipping point for you? What was the tipping point for you to stop or to recognize that you were showing up to work from your head, not from your heart?
Yeah. And I literally burned myself out. I was a single parent with 3 kids,
Mm.
putting all my energy into them, putting all my energy into work. And then I was also doing like business courses in the evenings and the weekend. And I eventually just reached a point where it was enough. I literally physically burned out and made myself sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that, again, coming back to the leadership, okay, what kind of life do I want to have? And what does that mean? If I'm going to lead myself successfully through a life where I am effective and not reaching those points of burnout, I need to reach some balance. So that's, you know, the self-care, but that's commitment to yourself before everybody else. So I would get up in the morning and get my butt to the gym. It wasn't an option. It's something you commit to. It's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. And then, yes, you have 3 kids, but you have to put yourself first. You got to take care of yourself first, and making sure you're eating well, making sure you're doing all that kind of stuff. And then balancing it with the more, balancing the work with the more female aspects of it. So yes, I was in an office space, but walking around and just, I think a more feminine way of doing business is building, I want to say like communities almost within the company, building really authentic, meaningful relationships with the people that you work with. And that's really been my secret to success.
Interesting.
In the corporate world.
Not the superficial, stereotypical work relationship, like going a little bit deeper and having more intense or deeper conversations.
Yeah, like, getting to know the people on the team, walking up to their desk in the middle of the day and just say, you know what, how you doing? How was your weekend? How are your kids doing? Just really making those connections rather than just sending them an email and saying, are you done that task?
Yeah.
So, and I think as women coming into corporate environments, that's what women are great at building community. We're great at sort of the soft skills. We're great at using our intuition. And so when you go up and have those person-to-person conversations, and, now we can use Zoom to do that. We can't just, say, oh, I can't do it, I'm out of the office. No, you've got Zoom. It's super easy to get on a quick Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever you've got and chat with your coworkers and check in. And, intuitively, you can read them. So coming from project management, people have tasks they have to complete by certain amounts of time. And I could check in with them and just get a read intuitively on, yes, are they really going to get that done? Are they feeling stressed? Is there maybe some sort of something I can take off of them so that they're feeling less stressed, or, just let them know that I've got their back if they need anything, just little things like that you can use your intuition for. So I find that once I realized that I can use those skills in the corporate environment, it doesn't have to be all, sort of that business.
Yeah.
It actually creates for a really successful environment. And I think I'm beginning to see that coming into corporations now. And it's really, really 100%, exciting.
100%. Conscious business. It is the movement. It is happening. There's a lot of spirituality and wellness in the workplace, and it's happening more and more. I've seen it. I've actually coached a few businesses that do that for a living. They go into C-suites and organizations and help that kind of transition from old school strategy to kind of new way of flow, as opposed to the push and the drive and that kind of forceful momentum. Now it gets into that push and that flow and ease. I guess it's bringing more grace and that heart-centered vibe into the workplace, and getting away from just another number, right? An employee as a number. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, a lot of them are bringing it in under the sort of wellness, wellness aspect, which is wonderful. But like wellness breaks, meditation moments. I used to actually, I used to go in and do lunch and learns on health and wellness into corporations as well. I was doing more health coaching at that point, but it's really wonderful to see that being brought in. And, we think that when we're sitting, working for 10 hours straight, we're being super productive and getting so much done. But by having burnt out myself, and, as a performance coach, it's not about that. It's not about just going. It's about taking those mindful moments, getting outside, getting some fresh air, because you're going to be much more impactful in shorter periods of time. And that's that's where you get all those creative ideas, is when you take time to just, relax your mind, relax your body,
Mhm.
get out of the cubicle or the desk or wherever
I
you're
know,
sitting that
right?
day. And, that's where all those intuitive moments come to you, and you're creative. So
Yeah, and you had mentioned this when we spoke earlier. Uh, I think this is a great segue because what you're describing is uh, what is success versus the end result or the journey. So what I want to do is, because you and I have somewhat similar stories of how we've transitioned some mindset around what success is. Um, what does success mean to you? What is that? What is that word?
well, you know what, at this point of my life, and I was thinking about this last night because I knew we were going to be having this conversation today, and it's like, what is success to me? To me, it's holistic. First and foremost, it's having a really great, clear relationship with myself, with my greater source, with my source energy, my creator, God, whatever you want to call it. I still don't think there's a word to actually describe what God
Right.
is. It's so beyond what any of us can comprehend. But having that clearly in place and having a solid foundation of that, and allowing all the activities in my life, whether it's my personal relationships or my business activities, or my health, just all aligning with that, with what I intuitively know I should be doing. Um, and so success, used to be, oh, I need to make money. I need to reach six figures. Okay, well, I got there. Now what? And I think a lot of people get there and then it's like, okay, now what? But that's where we have to go. It's not about the money. It's about who you're becoming
Correct.
along that journey to
That's
making
it.
the money. And it's about being more of who you are. And if I hadn't crashed and burned in that first marriage, I wouldn't be who I am today. It taught me so much about myself. It taught me so much about leadership, and it really clarified to me what success is. It's not about, I mean, it's all relative. It's part of it, where you live, the money you make, but it's all sort of the foundation underneath who you really are. So once you're clear on who you really are, then you can really define what success is. And then when you get there, you're going to feel it. It's not going to feel empty, like making, $1 million or whatever, because it's not just about that. It's about, challenging yourself to be more of who you are, and bringing that performance out of yourself and those leadership
Yeah,
skills.
it's that age old phrase. It's about the climb or it's the journey, and even it really is. And for me, it's the same. For me, success was always athletic achievement. I needed to, win medals and be like, because I needed to prove to myself, but I wanted that attention. For me, it was attention, whether I was in New York or LA and doing things or on stage or whatever. That was
Yeah.
a sense of identity and honestly, a sense of worth. And so it was always kind of like, I need to get there as opposed to,
And from the external, it sounds like too,
oh, well, absolutely.
that
That was
external
it.
validation.
I was, my success was predominantly external. So that's how I validated myself then. And, even up until probably 4 years ago is really when I made the kind of spiritual shift, if you will, for lack of a better term, but uh, to rid myself, to strip away all that, to stand naked, and then start to work again from the inside out and find what really resonates and what really means the most to me, and who I want to be associated with, who I want to be. Like you said, getting clear on who I want to be as a person, what I want. And I noticed that my version, my definition of success changed, and it changed by adding more of those, as you were saying, more of those feminine style qualities of being in the moment and being graceful and or having grace and mindfulness and doing things, not being always so, as the athlete in me that's been ingrained is just, strive, 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 to just have some ease and grace with how we navigate things. And
And I love that you just opened up that conversation where you said you would embrace the feminine aspects of yourself. And yet you're a super masculine guy, right? And that's what we see. That's what you come across now. And the fact that you're open to realizing that there are feminine characteristics and aspects that you can embrace within yourself and still be super masculine. I think this is a conversation that's just, really waiting to be cracked open, especially for a lot of men, because I don't think a lot of men are able to have that sort of discussion openly. I think they want to, maybe they can't articulate it in quite that way, but I think it's there, and I think it's emerging. And I love that you just opened the door to that conversation.
Thank you.
and I want to know, is there something that, like, what triggered that awareness in you?
Intuition. I've always been able to listen to my heart. I just never really kind of settled there. I always think I had these things, but I think the masculine was so predominant that it just quieted that voice anytime it would, the whisper of something would start. No, I had to be doing this, or I had to do that, or I had to be all macho or whatever, right? And humility really stripped that open. When I realized that I was not happy in my marriage and my relationship, I walked away, and I had to do some serious self-trench warfare, as I call it. I had to get in there and wage war with myself and everything. And it was just a very humbling process, by which that just gave me a layer of grace that I just wanted to, I honestly wanted to forgive myself. I wanted to just come from a place of love, and I don't want to say, it's funny, because I associate masculine with stress. Don't know why.
That's interesting. Wow.
But I do. I don't know if it's the stress associated with the drive of athletic performance. I don't know if it's the drive of trying to make shit happen in my life, like,
well, I
business-wise.
think taking action is a very male aspect of, who you are. And for females, it's more receiving, right? That's more of a feminine attribute. So you were like action, action, action. So you were all caught up in the action, and that receiving part was probably, like you mentioned earlier, sort of getting quiet and shut up and shoved in the corner, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And then I wanted more peace in my life, and I associate the peace with the feminine. And so I've kind of now, through the work, I feel fairly confident that I walk an even road, for the most part. And it's funny, I'm so more in tune with when I get kind of pulled one way, or I something happens and I'm like, something's pulling me this way, and I feel out of balance.
Oh, that's interesting. That's like you're much more connected to your intuition. Were you aware of your intuition kind of throughout your life, or is this something that also has been kind of become more?
I think it's definitely been
powerful.
Yeah, it's been fostered. I believe it was always there. I always did have some sense. I think stepping into this new role, if you will, has allowed me to open up that doorway to it. and especially with the work that I do with Leap Zone Strategies, and we deal a lot with intuition and energy work, and I coach a lot of intuitives and energy workers, in addition to a little bit more of the strategical business models as well. So it's just it's a place that I knew I needed to go more of instinctively, and then I walked through that door. So, and here I am.
And it's interesting because the more coaching work I do as well, it kind of sharpens my intuition too. And everybody's intuitive. So the more we're talking about it, the more we're using it, the more it's allowing everybody else to really, and the world's really quiet right now too. And I think
Yeah,
everybody's kind of beginning to really understand how intuitive they really are and how out of touch and distracted they've been from it for so long.
totally.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where I feel, I don't know if I'm right when I say this, but this is what I feel. I feel like everybody could be intuitive. I feel like we all
Oh,
have that ability.
absolutely.
I think it's like it's like the unidentified human organ that no one knows
Well,
about. It's
yeah,
in
and
us.
it's our inner guidance system, right? So when I'm working with my coaching clients, that's really what we're going back to. We're peeling away all the layers of who they thought they were, bringing them back down to who they are,
Yeah,
who they're meant to be, connecting them with their higher self, or God and all that. We're all here for a reason. We all have a purpose. I strongly believe that. I've seen that in my life so many times. And the more you get clear on that, the more it ties right into success. It ties right into leadership. Lead yourself from that place of intuition. That's
mhm.
what success is. It's just that alignment and that clarity. And once you've got that in place and you keep following it, it's we get off track sometimes, and that's okay. We can forgive ourselves and move on. But when we're connected to that, and when we're guided by that, life just flows.
Yeah.
Things flow
It's
and
magic.
all into place. It's
It's
magic, and it
yeah.
feels amazing. It just feels
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So to answer your
So
question, that's success to me. Yeah, long-winded answer, but we got there.
um, okay, so masculine, feminine. So you as a coach, as a success coach, I know you coach men and women. Uh, you have a large, I was going to say contingent, but I guess it is a contingent of women. You deal a lot with women professionals and women,
I
uh,
do, yeah. I have
right?
a women's group. Yeah, I work
Yeah.
mostly with women. Yeah.
So what do you see? So you help women. I mean, you help everyone, but when you focus with the women that you've worked with, do you see that perhaps like me on the opposite side, are they struggling with too much feminine qualities? Is that something that you come across?
I don't know if it's struggling with too much feminine qualities or not embracing enough of the masculine. Um, Sort of, the taking action is a really big roadblock for a lot of women. Just getting out there and being visible is a huge roadblock for a lot of women. That's why I really love working with visibility coaching and getting them on camera, getting them out on into their social media, getting more visibility around their business.
Right.
But that's really uncomfortable for them. And I think it's something that men are really good at and just comes naturally to them. They don't even think about that. um, a lot of women have through the centuries, we've been how do I put this so it's politically correct? I don't know. It's been a male dominated world, basically.
Okay.
And we haven't had the opportunities to step into having our own businesses, to step into really managing our own money and managing our own property, and you know um, being having more of a presence in marriages and more of a presence in the community. We're getting there. We're still getting used to it. It's been generations and generations and generations before us, so it's really almost in our DNA. to be quiet, to not, stay out of the spotlight, to prop up, our partner or somebody else. And it's changing a lot, but it's still there. The residue is still there. I've struggled with it a lot myself. So that's one reason why I really love working with women, is to help them pull themselves out of that, just because I've been there myself.
And tying it back into something you said earlier, so when you went into the tech workplace, did you come from predominantly feminine makeup, and then you pushed into the masculine world, trying to acquire all these more masculine traits, and that's kind of what you did, or and then of course it was too much, and you needed to pull back? How did you determine what you needed to move forward successfully at that time, successfully in that situation?
It was a few factors. So coming in from being a parent and having to take care of everyone, and giving, now I had to go into an environment where I needed to have expectations of people, and I needed to ask for things, and I needed to make sure things happened. So yeah, I think it was really coming in from a place of femininity into a place that's more masculine. And one thing that really challenged me was one company that I had been hired in a few years into my career. I was hired by two guys, and I started the job, and a week later, they came back and said, "Oh, the vice president of the company is questioning why we hired you. They think we just hired you because you're attractive."
Uh-huh.
And that made me so angry, because they were looking at me as this object that had walked into their workplace. They weren't looking at me as this businesswoman with skills and abilities coming into their office. And I tell you, that fired me up. That pissed me off. And I got in there, and I did one hell of a job in that company. And I think I was there for almost 4 years. By the end of the 4 years, that vice president was my biggest advocate in that company. So I totally turned that around. But again, I had to learn that balance between the male and the female. You can balance those skills. And I think finding that balance was just doing a lot of personal development on my own, because I was doing the business skills, and I always try and, increase my skills in that regard. But you need to really work on the soft skills too, to find that balance.
I like that. The soft skills. I love that. The soft skills.
Learning how to communicate with people, learning how to read people, understanding different personality types and how to work with them. And that's more the feminine side. So.
And that let's stay on this topic of self-growth and so forth. You started that at a younger age. You've been on this path for a while in terms of really up-leveling your own game. Mm-hmm. So share with us a little bit, how did you get started? What do you do? We call this a winning ritual. What do you do to keep Holly James firing, even keel, and kicking ass?
Yeah. So I don't know how much of my life I want to go back through, but it's always been important to me. And actually, I grew up in this little town. I had a kind of a rough childhood. I grew up in this little town, and they had a library. It was 2,000 people. It was a tiny library, but they had Louise Hay, they had Wayne Dyer, and it was like soul food for me. And I was just so grateful because I was, I had an eating disorder. I was struggling with anxiety and depression and, all this stuff going on in my home with my parents and myself. And it was just like, it was soul food. It was like, the sun coming out after,
Yep.
after 2 weeks of no sun on the BC coast. It was wonderful. And so I love reading. So that's always kind of been in my life. And then, dealing with that marriage. And then I think it was when I went back to work and I realized how important the personal development was. So at a minimum, every year I try and go to a seminar where I'm getting out of whatever environment I'm in, getting out of the city, getting out of my work for a couple of days, going off and getting into an environment where everybody's there to learn and grow and just be better at who they are. And the other thing I do is every day I'm connecting with my higher source. Every day I'm getting up and doing a meditation.
Yep.
I'm, putting some prayer in throughout the day. Before I need to do something important, like coming on a podcast with somebody like you, I'll just do a little meditation and ask that I get whatever inspiration or words or communication that needs to comes through, and just always staying connected to that, always staying connected to myself, but keeping those structures in place to do that. So, just making sure I get that in every day. Sometimes I need to do it more than once. And I really notice if that's not in place, that's where I start to feel, you kind of start getting on that emotional roller coaster. If you're not kind of keeping and checking in with yourself and making sure you are staying aligned with that intuitive energy that comes through all of us.
And I would suspect that you've created some boundaries around you in terms of what you want in your life and what you don't want in your life as well, in terms of
absolutely
colleagues, relationships, different things.
Yes,
right.
And that's a really good point is, we've talked about being aligned with your intuition and being all of who you are. And I actually did have a second marriage as well. But one of the pieces I left out of that marriage, and this was a big learning experience for me, was I wasn't all of who I am from the beginning of that relationship. I didn't talk about my spirituality. I didn't talk about my belief system. I didn't really talk about, I'm actually a really creative individual. I love the arts. I love painting and I love acting. And I started to revisit some of that. And my partner wasn't really understanding where this woman had come from because I hadn't really shared that in that relationship. So to then be in a relationship with somebody now, expressing these things and starting to talk about it again, it because I hadn't really opened up that piece of myself, I think I realized two things. I need to be around people who are into those things, who are spiritual, who are creative, who are always wanting to be and push more of who they are. And I also realized that just, not only in those close personal relationships, but my life in general, I need to surround myself with people who are positive, who are wanting to learn and grow and be more of who they are and really make the world a better place, because we need a lot more of that in the world. And I want to make the world a better place. So I want to be inspired by the people around me doing that. And, together we just all lift each other up.
Yeah. No. Amen to that. Right. It's interesting though, you talking about that situation with your second marriage, you, by not honoring who you were, you did a disservice to yourself, really, and
Yeah.
set that relationship up for, I don't want to say set it up for failure, but for a potential failure, because you weren't being authentic with who you were at the time, And,
No,
and
and yeah, I could have stayed and not been me, but
sure.
then that's not success, right? That's not happy. That causes depression and anxiety
So,
and
so
unhappy.
that's yeah. And I feel very passionate about, I want to tie this into today, to our current landscape. I know there's a lot of people that are potentially in a similar situation to you were, or they're just questioning things. They're perhaps realizing that they're not being authentic to themselves.
Hmm.
And I had a few episodes ago, I had a relationship coach on, and we talked about that. And there are a lot of relationships now having some pretty deep discussions going on
I
of
bet.
right, we're not hiding behind Friday night with the boys, or you know going off
Yeah.
here, or going to
Running
work
kids
every
to
day.
activities or, yeah,
Yeah.
working overtime. Yeah.
Exactly. And people are forced, which I think is actually a good term in this context. People have to have these discussions, whether they are with themselves, in terms of, am I happy? Am I living authentically? And what I'd like to do maybe is just spend a few minutes talking about that now. Do you do you see a common thread with some of the people you're working with or interact with that are struggling in this time, or if nothing else, what words could you share to help someone out there that would be listening to this and going, fuck, I know what she's dealing or dealt with. I've been there. I'm there now. What do I do? What do I do? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the first thing would be just be honest with yourself, you know? Maybe you had all these preconceived ideas about how life was going to be, and you're trying
Mhm.
to fit yourself into that mold right now. But maybe that mold is out of date, and maybe you've learned a lot more about yourself and a lot more about what you want out of life. And you know maybe it's time to just create a new mold to fit yourself into, and let go of the past. It's okay. You can reinvent yourself. You don't have to stay attached to that. And if that means letting go of relationships, and if that means changing your career path,
Right.
life is just too short. It's just too short to stay in situations that aren't serving us. Because you know I truly believe we're meant to be here to have a joyful, meaningful, passionate experience. And how can you do that if you're allowing yourself to stay in situations that aren't supporting that? So I just encourage you, just check in
Mm.
with yourself, be honest with yourself, and just recreate what your beliefs are around what success is to you now.
Yeah, and you had said earlier, getting clear on what you do want, and perhaps it's just sitting down with yourself and spending time with yourself and asking yourself those questions, and writing stuff down, and figuring out, who am I? Because I think a lot of people, they lose, and I'll speak for myself, they lose sense of their own identity as the days go by, as the weeks go by, and the years go
Yeah.
by. it's
Yeah.
quickly it's so easy to lose a sense of who you really are, who you want to be, especially in this day and age of uh, you know media, and buy this and have this car and travel here, and
Yeah, all the external noise
right,
coming at you.
I want
Yeah.
that on TV, I want that relationship, or I want to look like that, I want to be this, and you get lost. And I know I have two girls, and they're younger than your kids, and I struggle with, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate buffering them a little bit from this, and having them be more in the present and being more kind of in the now, as opposed to getting pulled by external forces.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Um, so I just want to say, for people that are out there who are having a hard time figuring out who they are and what they really want from themselves, then now the fact that you're aware of some type of disconnect is step one. And you're aware that something, just like I was years ago, just like Holly was years and years ago before my journey, instinctively there's something that just doesn't resonate right. And now's the time to crack that open and start to do the deep work. We have the time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's do the work. And obviously there's, the first thing you can do, as Holly said, is kind of surround yourself with people that serve you, and books and material that serves you. Right. I think that's very important too.
Not Netflix.
Exactly.
Not numbing out with Netflix.
Don't get me wrong. I like my escapes
Yeah,
once
there's
in
a
a
place
while.
for that. But you
However,
gotta do the other stuff first.
yeah. However, what serves you, what fills your cup, and escapism mentality is not a growth mindset. And so just recheck with yourself moving forward. And there's people out there like Holly, like myself, like others, that were blessed to make a living out of helping others and contributing to others' personal development, to their self-growth, to spreading the love, if you will, to increasing
Yes.
the frequency in the world, right?
Yes, making the world a better place. I'm all about
And
that.
that's it. And it's one person at a time. It's one conversation at a time. And that is our duty, right, HJ? That's our duty.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And it feels amazing. It really feels good.
It does. And I think we talk gratitude, we talk that, and it's just, it does give you a sense of purpose and belonging when you truly are of service to others for the collective good. It's an amazing thing. So, and you, my dear, are an amazing soul, and you
Oh,
are,
thank you.
well, you're doing your part to lift, right? So hats off to you. In terms of just tying this all up in a neat little bow, that because we are getting close to the end, we talked on a few things, Holly. Obviously, what I would really love is we should follow up this conversation with another one on masculinity and the whole
Sure.
conscious male, and how can we get that message out there more. And because you're right, there are, and I believe there are a lot of men that are in tune. They just don't know how to begin, what they need to do. And I would love to have that conversation at some other point.
I would love to too. I think that would be a great
It would
conversation.
be.
I think it's really a conversation that needs to be had and a lot more of. So yeah.
Good. All right.
That's a great idea.
Let's make it happen. Success, being present in the journey, not getting caught up in the materialistic outcomes, and really just embracing the now, all the little micro units along that journey. We had a nice conversation about masculine and feminine, and weaving that in together to kind of a harmonious dance. Really, it's a dance. It's an ebb and flow, right? That's what I like. There's days where we both need to be more X, or we need to be more Y, whatever it is, right? And that's the ebb and flow. So that was a really nice discussion. Thank you for that. Is there anything that you would like to kind of add as a final note to this conversation, Holly?
I think I just want to say that, you know, through life, we all go through some really shitty situations. And when we're in the middle of it, it's tough to see our way out. But, and I've been in a lot of those situations, but I'm getting better at navigating them. But there's always a way out. You know, there's always a way out. And once you're out, you are able to see what the gift in that situation was. And you are able to understand how that situation pulled out and showed to you aspects of yourself that you never would have known otherwise. So I just want to say, if anyone's in a really brutal, tough situation right now, you can get through it. You will get through it. You will be stronger for it. It takes time, but just commit to yourself, commit to getting through it, because you will get there. And there's resources in place, there's people in place. Just find them and empower yourself, and don't be anybody's victim, because you know you just got to make the choice. You just got to make the decision and use your power.
Love it. Yeah. Thank you. There is always a silver lining in every situation. Always an educational moment, right? Good, Holly. Thank you so much, and also thank you for being accessible, to being transparent and in your journey. I think that's what makes you stronger and a success as a success coach is owning it and walking your talk and showing up. So thank you for that. And thank you all for joining us today in this conversation. And as I always say, mad love to the courageous out there. Keep the fire stoked. Keep going. Strive. Personal growth always it's got to be a non-negotiable. So
absolutely.
All right, Holly, thank you again, and we will talk to you soon. And thank you everybody for watching.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye. Thanks, James. Bye.